Silvio Costa, and I'm a social media marketing intern at Google Content. Thank you very much for tuning in to our podcast today. And I'm joined by Ave Peetri. Ave is a professional certified coach and a co-active coach. She's also an accredited team coach, and she holds an MBA. With 2 decades of experience in working with companies, managers, leaders, teams, and employees, she has a lot of experience when it comes to making teams work well together. And she will be sharing some of that experience with us today. So, hi, Ev. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you very much for this warm welcome. I'm very delighted to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you here. Now, in my little introduction of you, I only scratched the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And of course, I couldn't help but check your LinkedIn profile and website, and I saw that you have worked with a lot of companies in the past. And I was wondering, can you tell us a bit more about your area of expertise?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I used to lead teams. I have been working for Coca-Cola. I was a marketing director. I've also worked as a CEO for different companies, and I've also created my own company. So my background is really leadership. But about 10 years ago, I discovered coaching. And then I decided that what I want to do is to really help other leaders become better at taking responsibility for their world and also for their businesses. So when I started coaching, first as an individual coach, but more and more often I was asked to, okay, can you come and work with my team? So at first, I started based on my facilitation experience and my own leadership experience and coaching. But then very soon I realized I want to learn that. So I went to study with Peter Hawkins. I did the systemic team coaching certificate. And now I'm studying also with David Clutterbuck. So these two are really considered to be the most well-known team coaches at the moment. And I keep learning. I keep learning from all the companies I've worked with. I've worked with companies in Canada, where I used to live, in Oman, where I'm also living right now, and all international different leadership teams. And also I've been working with some of the schools, which is also very interesting, the leadership teams of schools.
Right, right. Yeah, well, it sounds like you have a lot of experience then. Also, firsthand with the basically being in companies and leading companies yourself, but also helping others lead basically. And you also manage. You also mentioned self-managing teams.
Yeah, I mean, self-managing teams is a concept that is known differently. I mean, I call them collective leadership teams. I've also heard shared leadership teams. So there's different teams that operate as a system. So, but they all mean the same thing. As far as I know, there might be some little nuances that I'm omitting at the moment, but they really mean group of people working together towards a shared goal. And when self-managing teams or collective leadership goes above and beyond working as a team, it really is working as a system. So it's sort of like the sum of its parts is greater than all of the individuals in the team alone.
I understand. Right. And this is also going to be the topic of our podcast today. So self-managing teams.
Yeah.
And it sounds really interesting what you just said. Just to pick up on that self-managing teams are actually bigger than the sum of their parts. And I was wondering, how exactly do self-managing teams differ from regular teams?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the big things. Is very often in a team, some people are underutilized and other people are overworked. This is one of the common ailments of the teams today. And, the leadership is thinking, how can I motivate my people, and how can I give more responsibility to my team members. So these are the typical problems that come up in the teams today. And there's obviously with now teams going virtual, there's a new problem. How do I know, are they really working? Then the self-managing teams really have actually worked out how they can find a purpose that motivates everyone, so that the team leader doesn't have to go around motivating everyone individually, even though that might be useful. But it's a lot of work, and it's good to find a purpose that works for everyone.
Right.
And they really have clear idea as to what they need to do, what the stakeholders expect from them, and how to work together. And that is the critical part, how to work together, respecting the diversity of the people in the team.
Right. So here are multiple elements here. So it sounds a bit like every individual has some part in leadership. Would this be accurate?
Absolutely. I totally believe that everybody is a leader, and given the right motivation, skills, and tool, everybody is capable of making the right decisions. It's not just only some people who can make the right decisions.
Right. And would this also mean that, for example, self-managing teams could basically harness more potential? I remember that you mentioned just a few minutes ago that some people are underworked in normal teams, and some people are, not they cannot contribute as much as they would otherwise do. So would you say that self-managing teams in that sense could work better than a regular team?
Ideally, yeah. I mean, self-managing teams are not the cure-all and end-all, but it really. I've seen some research done on high-performance teams, and this is what high-performance teams do. They are capable of utilizing the skills of everybody in the team, and also invite the team members to grow, so that they want to learn more, they want to do more.
I see. Yeah, that's really interesting, because I can imagine that in some teams maybe the focus isn't on, or regular teams, I mean, that the focus isn't so much on helping members grow, but just achieving the task. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to identify now what good parts, or like what merits self-managing teams are. And we just mentioned that maybe they could harness the potential of their team members better. But maybe they could, what you mentioned just now, that they can help the team members grow as well, so not only achieve the task. But what other things are there to self-managing teams?
One of the really important things in today's world is that it changes so quickly. Everything around us changes so quickly, as we witnessed in the past year, very drastically, especially. So you cannot really wait for the bureaucratic process of the company to figure out how shall we respond to this new change. You're very much reliant on people who are right there working with your clients and other stakeholders to make the right decisions. So one of the merits of a self-managing team, and of a team where everybody knows what the purpose, what the stakeholder needs are, that they can make the right decisions right there and then. And another thing is also looking into the future. That if you are operating in the past, you'll be very, very quickly obsolete.
Right.
So you have to always look ahead and see, what is the next demand? What is it that we need to change in order to stay relevant in this fast-changing world?
Right, and this also sounds as a bit like the company should also, or the environment should trust that team, because what you said, if you want to break away a little bit from this bureaucratic process, then it sounds to me like there's also an element of trust in this.
Totally, absolutely, so right. Trust is one of the core pillars of a self-managing team. It's really hard to work together if you don't really trust if the other person will pull through for you. So yeah, psychological trusting each other, understanding each other's capabilities is very, very important part of a self-managing team.
I see. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually, let's talk about that a bit more. I'm wondering
Yeah.
how can one create a self-managing team? So let's say that I'm having a small company and I have departments, and I would like actually to have a bit more to make my teams basically more independent. What things could I do? One, we already mentioned trust. What other elements are there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no universal formula that I can give out in like 5 minutes of how to do it. Usually, it does take a lot of work, but I can give some parameters what to look out for or what is important. I mean, one is let's say that you are this entrepreneur and you are the leader, and you hire new people in there. One of the important things for you to look into is your own biases and your own tendencies. Um, do you think you know better? Do you believe you can trust the people that you hire and that are working with you? And how far are you willing to go to give responsibility to your team members? Yeah, and there is no right or wrong. It's really what are you comfortable with, and where is your edge for growth in that.
Right.
So that is probably one of the most important things. And also, second most important thing is the purpose. I mean, there is no team that exists without a purpose if you think about it. Teams are always called in to achieve something, to do something. Otherwise, there is no point in having a team.
Right.
Yeah. So make sure that everybody is aware of what is the purpose of the team, and also that it is motivating to everyone. If Netflix, I think, is known for taking a long time to hire people, and they will really look for what is it, what are the values of the people they are hiring, do they align with the purpose that Netflix has. It's if you don't align with the purpose of the company, it's going to be very hard for you to be enthusiastic about it.
Right, and then probably this would also mean that you are less likely to take initiative, to take responsibility, and basically be more independent in that way.
Yeah, absolutely, because it doesn't matter to you. It's not what motivates you to wake up in the morning and do something.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So,
yeah.
Okay, so there are basically two main things. So one, you should look yourself as a leader and see what you're comfortable with, what you're trying to achieve. And then the second one would be the purpose. So making your team members aware and making sure that that purpose that you have is motivating for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering how could a leader, for example, communicate the purpose better, and how can a leader make sure that that purpose is motivating for their employees?
Purpose really comes from the stakeholders on the team. Your clients really give you the purpose. What are you there for? What would you say the purpose of the podcast here is?
I would say that is about giving the listeners some valuable insights that they can walk away with and help them grow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in and your clients or your listeners really are what kind of people?
Mm, they're probably professionals in a sense, and then they should also probably be motivated to learn.
Yeah, yeah, professionals who want to learn, who want to educate themselves on topics that are important to them. Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah. So so you are clear about who's your target audience. You know what they are looking for, and then you are creating the team or the purpose, the product, so that they um, will get what they want. And how motivating is it for you to work with such clients?
Hmm. Yeah, for me it's actually really motivating. I actually it gives me a lot of energy to know that I can contribute to something and that I can basically help a lot of people and like yeah provide valuable content to them. So for me it is really motivating.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really it. Is with your team, you are discussing that this is what our target audience is. These are the clients. This is what they want. Would that be motivating for you?
Hmm. I see. Okay, so it's basically
Yeah.
about opening a conversation. Could you say that?
Yeah, it is about opening the conversations and having like you mentioned, trust.
Hmm.
Having the trust within the team so that the the team members are actually open to say, well, actually, that's not very motivating for me,
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
and and offering some things that maybe to look into differently or not. And one of the things that I have found working with different companies, the more clear they become about purpose, the more clear it becomes to team members whether they like to work at that company or not.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and this kind of makes sense indeed because, of course, if you also have things clear for yourself and if you really see what you're contributing to, then I can imagine that's more motivating than being stuck in a place where you're doing things but you don't really see the outcome, you don't really understand what you're putting all those hours in.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Okay, so basically in the end we could kind of summarize this as okay, open a conversation with your team, be open with them and basically engage them in this dialogue about what the purpose is and hear them out and yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And also be open to suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, about this I'm actually curious. Mm, do you think that self-managing teams from this perspective of trust and dialogue, are better than regular teams when it comes to making sure that they stay on track? Sometimes, of course, teams can deviate a bit from their purpose and, for
Mm,
instance, I don't know, be stuck in some sort of bureaucracy and some sort of bureaucratic process and kind of forget what they were there for initially.
absolutely. Absolutely. Another really important part of a self-managing and successful self-managing team is that they have a process in place about learning.
Hmm.
Because it's not like, okay, I have created a self-managing team and now it's going to be ready forever and we're just going to happily go into the sunset.
Mm.
Would be so nice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but just like world around us changes every day, the team has to also be ready to respond to the changes. And people leave, they come, their priorities change. So all of that, the change is constant in a self-managing team. And how do you harness that? How do you harness the learnings from the change so that you can learn from your mistakes and get back on track, whatever the new track is?
Mm-hmm.
That is also one of the core pillars of a self-managing team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So basically, trust and learning are
Hmm.
crucial when it comes to self-managing teams.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Mm. And it also sounds I'm wondering because what you talked about saying that team members come and go, but there should be some sort of process in place. Is it somehow similar to a culture, to a team culture?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It is, and Peter Hawkins especially is saying, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't think I have exact quote there, that the teams, the teams should be able to function just as well together as they are apart.
Mm-hmm.
So it is this something what we call culture, the process, or the structure and goals of the team that keep it together and working towards the same purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. All right. So it's basically, it sounds a bit like team members ideally should have this way of working internalized in a sense.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. That it's a habit, that's the way we're working, and the learning habit comes with it, so that we are learning from what's going on and from each other, and we don't have to be in the same office 8 hours a day in order to be on track. We can easily work apart as well.
Right, right. All right. So it's almost as if you have some sort of orchestra, and then everyone knows what beat they're on, and then you could play in the same room, but then if you play at home, you'd still be in sync in a sense.
I love it. Yeah, there's a lot of nice examples of pieces of music created while everybody is in their own little quarantine place. So yeah, it does remind of a beautifully orchestrated piece of music.
I see. I see. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds a bit like yeah, like this sort of culture can exist um, in spite of the lack of a physical place. But I'm wondering, is it also possible to create this sort of culture without having a physical place? Or, yeah, another way to put it, what do you need to create this culture? So you kind of talked about where can that culture be and how can it be, but I'm wondering how can you build it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There are a couple of questions I'm picking out from here. And one of them, do you need to create it in one place? I mean, in today's world, before COVID happened, a lot of teams were already working virtually. You
Right.
had somebody in the States, somebody in Europe, somebody in Asia, and they were all part of a team. So yes, you can have a self-managing team, and especially when it comes to different time zones and different cultures working together, it's very important to have the core processes and the core culture that ties everyone together and performing towards the same goals.
Mm-hmm.
And with starting to create self-managing teams. I mean, I always am the supporter of get some help. If you feel like you can't do it alone, get some help.
Right.
uh, and maybe especially with teams, it's always useful to get another pair of eyes looking at what's going on. Because as human beings, we have our biases and we are used to focusing on certain things, and very often we see things in a certain way.
Right.
And when there is another pair of eyes that says, well, I just noticed that there is something like that going on. What do you think about that? That can be really eye-opening and enable you to understand what is required for you to have a more effective and successful self-managing team.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is really, really valuable to kind of remember that these things already existed. So I'm trying to think now, because of Corona, maybe a lot of teams are kind of forced into this online environment. But then it's indeed very valuable, I think, to remember that these things existed before. So it's nothing that new. Of course, maybe now it's more prevalent, but it's not like it's coming out of nowhere. And then also, I really like this point of of basically try to get help. Like if there's something that
Mm-hmm.
you're stuck, it's important to reach out and yeah, get a second perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why team coaches are one of the fastest growing professions right now. There's a lot of need for team coaches, especially with this pandemic, that people were forced to um, work virtually and find different ways of working. And then they realize, oh my God, my ways don't work. What do I do now?
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Right. Actually, this was another question that I had prepared, and it's nice that we already started talking about the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
because you kind of already hinted that now there are more self-managing teams in that sense, or at least there are more people that are struggling with structuring their team.
Mm-hmm.
Would you see this trend continuing, that more and more teams are going to move online?
I believe so. I mean, everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people are saying, okay, let's wait until it's over and get back to normal.
Mm,
But I believe that it's already the new normal.
mm,
I don't think we will go back to what it was before the pandemic, and we'll start working the same way again.
mm,
Because we've learned a lot of new things. We've learned some good, some bad, and um, even a lot of managers who maybe were used to clocking people in and out have realized that, well, maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe there are different ways I can measure my people rather than do they come at 8 and leave at 5.
right.
So I do believe that the pandemic, as everything else, it just fastened or made a lot of processes that were already happening in the world, just made them come a little bit faster.
I see. I see. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And actually, we did a survey here at Gulkanten, in which we find out exactly what you mentioned. We found out that people actually appreciated that the pandemic offered them an incentive to digitalize their processes ultimately,
Hmm.
and a lot of them also said that they actually appreciate the fact that a lot of meetings moved online and that they don't have to travel for those. So I can also
Yeah,
recognize these things as well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm so glad you have research to back me up here.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm. Right. Okay, so then basically it sounds like self-managing teams are the future in this sense.
I think it's the now. You know, we it was the future until last year, and now it's now.
Right, right. So we're already into it now.
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny how some of the things just get come much faster when something so endemic happens as the corona crisis, and then people are forced to reevaluate their habits and realize that what they were doing wasn't really effective, but they were able to continue with the non-effective habits because there was nothing forcing them to change.
Right, right.
Yeah, and human beings don't like change. I
Mm,
mean, this is normal. We like to keep the status quo. So until something comes along that doesn't allow us to keep the status quo, and we are forced to find different ways of adapting to the environment.
right, right. Yeah, no, exactly. I recognize that as well, that indeed we tend to be really comfortable in that sense, and that indeed change is a lot of times scary, and then we might choose actually not to even try to improve certain things just because it seems very scary and it would mean giving up on our old ways, even though they might be not that effective. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and about this, I'm wondering, is this maybe another merit of self-managing teams? We already touched upon it, that we talked about this sort of process and having more members involved. Could this be a merit that they manage to stay relevant more so than normal teams, than regular teams?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the reason why is that, let's say you have a team of 8 people, and sort of so-called traditional teams, it's the team leader who makes all the decisions.
Right.
So then you only can use the capacity of the one person out of 8. Whereas if you use the intelligence, the skills, and the capacity of all the 8 people, think how much more powerful you are,
Right.
and how much more information you can process and take into account before making the decisions.
Right, indeed, yeah, exactly. And this taps back into what you said earlier about allowing each team member to contribute and harnessing all that knowledge and all that what you said, intelligence and power. Indeed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like indeed self-managing teams have a lot of merits. They are really relevant today, and they kind of were the natural step, let's put it that way, in the progression of team development and how companies work. But I'm wondering, are there some pitfalls to self-managing teams? Some things that maybe we should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. There are, probably one of the biggest pitfalls is that, but that's not common just for self-managing teams, that people get stuck in the past. Like you mentioned, that you know your purpose and then you just don't revisit it, that you keep operating under the same premises, that okay, that's what we're here to do and let's do that. And history is full of companies like that who have not gone back and revisited what's happening around them and kept producing things that are no longer relevant in today's world. So that would be definitely one. The also, collective decision making is not cure all. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and ask everybody's opinion to make a decision. It requires also people empowered to make the decisions on their own, and especially when you need to make fast decisions. You can't go around and ask, is everybody okay with that? And sometimes it's interpreted as such, that, oh, we have to get everybody on board and everybody has to have a consensus in that decision. That's not true. If you start doing that, you'll be really slow.
Right.
So having the courage to also make decisions and make wrong decisions and safely fail is one of the important qualities that self-managing teams need to have.
Right. Right, okay, and this sounds okay. So basically, if you want to have a successful self-managing team, you should really pay attention to this, because otherwise you can fall into the other direction, which is that you always seek consensus and always try to, in a sense, please everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, if you that's very often where, okay, people think that, okay, autocratic, all decisions, easy, fast, self-managing, long processes. and that's not true. So it's the concept of what it is. It's really in the middle there.
Right, I see. And I'm also wondering, is there a size limit? Now looking at the more practical side of this topic, is there some sort of limit, or is there some sort of average number of members that the self-managing team has?
Yes, there has been a lot of research done, and I'm quoting Peter Hawkins and David Clutterbuck because I'm more familiar with their work. It doesn't mean that others haven't done research.
Right.
It's usually said about 7-8 people is the max, because when it gets bigger, then you already start having fractions, or sort of like subgroups. And then again, you can also work with the teams of teams, or sort of like the larger teams. You can have, for example, 3 teams of 3, and then you're working with the larger system. You're working with the teams of teams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a way to work. So yes, 7 to 8 is what research says that's the most optimum size.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways to work with larger teams, but there's just different structures.
Right. I see. But would you say that it is still possible? So let's say that I have a small-ish company of 50, 50 employees, but then I would like to create self-managing teams. Would it be,
Oh yeah,
would it be, of course, because you just mentioned that then it wouldn't be possible to just put everyone in one self-managing team, but I'm wondering how would it work if I still want to keep that?
absolutely, and that's a great question. It's because all of these teams in the 50 plus people that you have, there are more than just one team. There are different teams in it. You probably have a customer service, you have operations, you have marketing team, finance team. They all are teams, and they all need to work as a team together. And then there is also the larger team, which is sort of leadership team. That is also a team. That could so you'll have multiple teams of 7 to 8.
All right.
That are all working because they all have slightly different purpose. Marketing team and finance team, they don't have the same purpose.
Indeed.
Their purpose is slightly different, right?
Right. Exactly.
Even though they are in the same company.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then it sounds like the sort of solution to this would be identify the teams.
Yeah,
kind of,
absolutely. Yeah.
Have this sort of lens of looking and really weeding out, like all the teams basically. Well, not weeding out, but like identifying basically all the teams.
Identifying the structure that you have and how does it work together and who needs to work together as a team, who has a common purpose and whose purpose is differently. They should be in a different team.
Right. And then of course from there, I can imagine you basically start with the processes that we already talked about, with basically building from there each individual self-managing team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And now I'm also wondering, because of course we heard in the beginning about your experience, and now that we talked a little bit about what self-managing teams are, what their strengths are, what the pitfalls are, I'm wondering what lessons have you learned from your experience about self-managing teams?
No man is an island. No team is an island.
Right.
Yeah, all teams are connected, and all teams are unique. So in my practice, there has never been one team that follows exactly the same development process, or that I can use exactly the same tools with them in order to help them become self-managing and working together. So as many teams I've worked with, as many different processes there have been. And yes, working with teams is complex and sometimes it gets messy. Well, let me correct that. Always it gets messy. Especially, we spoke about people don't like change, and even though they understand intellectually that it is good for them, but their body fights change because that's the way we're built as human beings. So there's usually conflicts, and there's usually things that need to be reworked and reworked again before the teams find a way that they can work together.
Right.
So, but which makes my job really interesting. I never know what I walk into.
Indeed. It really sounds like it exactly, that it's always like this sort of new and exciting puzzle also that you've never seen before.
Exactly, it's always different. It's amazing.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then it sounds like like you're really never gonna get bored, and also that it also sounds like it could be a learning experience for you as well. If it's always something new, do you also sometimes get new insights and discover
Oh
new
yes.
things? Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Learning every day, which is also, if you don't like learning, if you don't like updating yourself, don't become a team coach.
Oh, there's one career advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. No, I learn so much from my clients every day. Every day, I learn so much from my clients, and that makes me, want to go out and learn some more from different sources and everything. So yeah, learning is not just learning from somebody who's been there before. It's also learning from what you do every day. So sort of like the continuous learning circle. Yeah.
Right. So basically seeing, what we just talked about, seeing new things and then trying them out, being challenged also, I can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a really, really interesting field to be in.
For you, so you like learning then.
Yeah, indeed. But probably it depends. It depends. Some other people might be a bit scared of this, indeed. Yeah.
True. Some people might find it scary. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, when working with teams, did you identify maybe, of course, a part we already talked about the change, the reluctance to change, but did you identify some other things that teams tend to hold back from? Is there some sort of process that teams feel like they don't want to get into, or?
When you say holding back, I think most of the time people are holding back saying what they really mean for fear of hurting others or for fear of looking bad. So that is also quite common to, like with all the teams I worked with. And this is, we discussed the psychological safety and trust in a team.
Right.
That's, and sometimes the trust can be there, but people have their sort of self-image that I can't say that to somebody else, even though it's hurting me, but I'm not going to say that it hurts me. I'm just going to be a nice person and take it on the chin. Yeah.
Right.
But this way, if you don't say what really bothers you, then you can't fix it either.
Yeah, no, of course, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this circles nicely back to where we began, which is about trust, basically, and really making sure that that's that is there, and then that kind of feeds all the other processes, of course, also together with the learning pillar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it has been a really, really interesting discussion. I definitely learned a lot about self-managing teams in here.
And I understand you've actually studied them as well, so it's great.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about them before, but now I feel like I got a much better picture of what they actually mean and what's really important for self-managing team. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I would like to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if some of our listeners would like to get in touch to you, to follow you. How can they find you?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. and with my name, Ave Peetri, so you can find me on LinkedIn. And also, I have a Facebook page. It's Coaching by Ave Peetri. And I also have a website, which is avepetri.ee. So I'm available if you want to get in touch. I'll be happy to answer questions or share some more learnings.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me here. It was a lot of fun.
Same. I had a lot of fun as well. It was a pleasure to have you. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and we hope to catch you in our next podcast. Have a nice day. Hey, Sylvie here. Thanks again for tuning in. If you want to listen to more podcasts like these, then don't forget to follow us on our social media. On Facebook at Cool Content Coach and LinkedIn at Cool Content AB. We have a lot of articles there with tips and tricks that will help you make the most out of these dynamic times. Lastly, check our website, coolcontent.com. There you can find a lot of coaching programs, which you can join to get in contact with some of Sweden's finest coaches. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to catch you in our next podcast. Bye for now.